Kenma sat on the edge of his bed, his phone clutched tightly in his hands. His face was still damp with tears, his body trembling with the weight of everything that had just happened. He stared at the screen, scrolling through his contacts aimlessly, his mind a jumbled mess. He didn't know who to call, but then his thumb hovered over a familiar name, Akaashi. He hesitated for a moment, his chest tightening. He didn't even know what he'd say. What could he say? But before he could overthink it, his finger tapped the screen, and the line began to ring. Kenma held the phone to his ear, each ring echoing loudly in the suffocating silence of his apartment. Part of him hoped it would go to voicemail, that he wouldn't have to speak. But after just a few seconds, Akaashi's calm voice answered. Kenma? Kenma opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat felt like it was closing, the words caught somewhere deep inside. He gripped the phone tighter, his breathing uneven as he tried to say something, anything, but nothing came. Akaashi's voice softened immediately. Kenma, are you okay? Still, Kenma couldn't respond. A quiet, shaky breath escaped him, and he knew Akaashi had heard it. I'm coming over, Akaashi said firmly, no hesitation in his voice. I'll be there soon. Before Kenma could even think to protest, the line went dead. Kenma stared at the phone, his hands still trembling. A part of him felt guilty for dragging Akaashi into this, but another part, the part that felt utterly broken, was relieved. He didn't want to be alone right now, even if he couldn't find the words to explain why. It wasn't long before there was a soft knock at Kenma's door. He didn't move at first, his body frozen with indecision. But the knock came again, gentle but insistent. Kenma, it's me, Akaashi called from the other side. Slowly, Kenma forced himself to his feet and shuffled to the door. He opened it just enough to see Akaashi standing there, his face etched with quiet concern. Without a word, Kenma stepped back, letting him in. Akaashi entered and closed the door behind him, taking one look at Kenma's tear-streaked face before his expression softened further. Kenma tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat, and fresh tears welled up in his eyes. He looked away, ashamed of how small and broken he felt. Hey, it's okay, Akaashi said softly, stepping closer. You don't have to say anything. Kenma's shoulders shook as he choked back a sob, his hands balling into fists at his sides. He hated this, hated feeling so weak, so exposed. But Akaashi didn't say anything else. Instead, he gently placed a hand on Kenma's shoulder, grounding him. The small gesture broke whatever fragile wall Kenma had left, and he crumpled. Akaashi caught him as he sank to the floor, his sobs finally spilling out as he buried his face in his hands. Akaashi sat beside him, his arm still on Kenma's shoulder, steady and patient. He didn't press for details, didn't demand an explanation. He just sat there, offering quiet comfort as Kenma let it all out. Minutes passed before Kenma's sobs began to subside, his breathing still shaky but more even. He wiped at his face with trembling hands, his voice barely above a whisper when he finally spoke. I messed everything up. Akaashi frowned but didn't interrupt, giving Kenma space to continue. Kuroo, he left, Kenma said, his voice breaking again. I think I pushed him away for good this time. Akaashi's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened slightly on Kenma's shoulder, a silent show of support. Kenma looked down at his lap, his fingers twisting together. He's right, you know, about everything. I don't let people in. I don't know how to. Akaashi was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady. Then he said, you don't have to figure it all out at once, Kenma, but you can't do it alone, either. Kenma's lips trembled, and he nodded slightly, his throat tightening again. Akaashi shifted so he was facing Kenma more fully. You're not alone in this, okay? I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here. Kenma didn't trust himself to speak, so he just nodded again, his tears falling silently now. For the first time that night, the crushing weight on his chest felt just a little lighter. In the dim light of his room, Kenma sat in silence, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him like a suffocating blanket. The echoes of laughter and the warmth of friendship seemed like distant memories now, fading into shadows that danced around him. Akaashi had left, and with him, a part of Kenma's heart had shattered. Kuroo, his anchor, his light, was gone, and the emptiness left in his absence was unbearable. Kenma had always been the quiet one, the one who preferred the company of video games to the bustling world outside. But Kuroo had seen through the walls Kenma had built around himself. He had pulled him into the sunlight, taught him the beauty of connection, and made him feel alive. Now, with Kuroo gone, everything felt hollow. The room was filled with the soft glow of the screens, but the games that once brought him joy now felt like a cruel reminder of what he had lost. He thought of Kuroo's laughter, the way it would light up the room, and how, with just a few words, he could make Kenma forget his worries. Without him, the world was an endless loop of gray, and the thought of facing another day without Kuroo felt like an insurmountable task. Tears streamed down Kenma's face as he recalled their last moments together. Kuroo had promised him that they would always be together, that no matter what happened, they would face it side by side. But promises felt empty now, like whispers carried away by the wind. Kenma felt isolated, trapped in a cage of despair, where every thought spiraled deeper into darkness. The silence around him was deafening, a stark contrast to the vibrant life they had shared. In that moment of overwhelming sorrow, Kenma made a decision that would seal his fate. He couldn't imagine a life without Kuroo's presence, without the laughter and the adventures that had filled his days with purpose. Despair twisted inside him, and he felt as though he was standing on the edge of an abyss, staring into the void that awaited him. With shaky hands and a heavy heart, Kenma took the final step. In that last moment, he hoped to find solace, to be reunited with Kuroo in whatever lay beyond this world. As the darkness enveloped him, Kenma whispered a soft apology, wishing for forgiveness and understanding, hoping that somehow, Kuroo would hear him. And thus, in a world that had once been filled with color, Kenma's light flickered out, leaving behind a haunting silence that echoed the depths of his pain, a tragic reminder of the fragility of life and the bonds that can be lost in an instant.
I feel my pecker tingling, balls are jingling too. Come on and tell me whether I can link them together with you. I need a hot slip mommy to slip my salami into.